Got an email from a man named George. It says, "Dear Shawn, 2 years ago, I took the time to research the history of Mormonism, and after many hours of in-depth study, realized what I had been taught and believed for 58 years was all a lie." And I've been in the same boat, George. People like yourself went from being a heretic to a hero, and I applaud, thank you, Wendy, the work you have done and are doing to expose the organization for what it really is. Then he says, "The problem I came up against was applying the same kind of reasoning to the Bible, starting with Adam and Eve and on through the New Testament. If you don't mind me asking, remember, if you don't mind me asking, how do you deal with this in your own life? For example, the fact that the Gospels were not written until years after the fact, and things of that nature. I would love to believe, I'm just not believing anymore. Thank you for your time, George." So, it's a really good question from George. It's not unique to him, frankly. Many people, especially ex-LDS people, face a similar issue when they find themselves burned by the untruths of Mormonism. So George asked me, how do you do it? How do you read this Bible and accept these things, that Adam and Eve, or the fact that the Gospels were written after the fact, and all these things? Let me just handle those things really quickly. The Gospel's written after the fact. Jesus said to his apostles, "Listen, I'll bring all things to your, the Holy Spirit will bring all things to your remembrance, whatsoever I've said to you." So the belief is that the Gospels were written by virtue of the Holy Spirit. That is how they were written. So it doesn't matter if they were written a day after Jesus died or 400 years after he died. The belief is behind that is that the Holy Spirit. But that's just the standard answer to that one. I just thought I'd throw it in there. I want to point out to you that when we compare physical evidences, George, between Mormonism and the stories that are written in ink on paper between the LDS and Christianity, it's apples and car parts. It's not close. So you're kind of making a comparison that you discovered that Mormonism was false by your study, and now you're looking at the Bible and you're discovering the same thing. When you look at the two, they are really two different worlds. There's a genetic group of people that are called the Jews. There are no genetic people called the Lamanites or the Mulekites or the Nephites. We don't have a genetic history of those people. And the Jews have an actual land with an actual verifiable history, and there are archaeological supports for them. There's tremendous manuscript evidence for the Old Testament, and there's tremendous manuscript evidence for the New Testament, and on and on and on. There's not a single coin from Zarahemla. There's not a single fragment of ancient Egyptian papyrus, and there's not 1 ounce of historical support for the LDS scriptural claims. None. So you are looking, my brother, at the Rocky Mountain range of mountains, comparatively, of Judaism, to a grain of sand of Mormonism when it comes to supportive materials. You don't have to agree with the Rocky Mountain amount of evidence. You can believe that it's all been misinterpreted and confabulated and created to make this Bible and everything else, and it's full of myth. But nevertheless, when you're talking about a purely material footprint between Mormonism and biblical Christianity, it's night and day, my brother. So that's where I start, okay? Secondly, I am constantly coming up against things that have been promoted in the organized group of Christianity that are not right and are cultural, and they're man-made and do not withstand scrutiny like what you're giving the Bible. And for this, I'm attacked by keepers of the faith, just like you're attacked when you're a Mormon and you go after the legitimacy of the all things Mormon. You get attacked by the policemen of the faith. Well, I'm attacked too, but it doesn't stop me from accepting the truths I find that replace the lies. Okay? So let me just give you a case in point. If someone says, "Oh, you know, Noah, he fit all the animals of the world into that ark." Now, when you're young, you're taught that and you kind of believe it. You don't know how. And then you get older and you're kind of wondering about it, and you have some preachers come up with some solutions, you know, like he shrunk the animals down or they didn't have to defecate while they were on the ark or eat. And there's all kinds of things men come up with. And then you sort of start saying, okay, I got to find out what this is about. So I go and I dig in and I find out it could have been a geographical flood very easily. And it could have been within a basin where mankind had not spread out beyond that basin relative to the time and course of history since Adam and Eve. And that all the animals of that area could have easily fit into, or not all the animals, but two and four of the other kind could have fit into that ark. And all of that stuff. And then you come up with a solution that says, well, that's viable. I can accept the story, but I don't have to accept it as it's interpreted today. So third, I am of the opinion that God, who I see as God, allows all people, and this is important, my friend, I believe God allows all people to discover exactly what they want to find. And I don't know if many people believe this, but I believe this. God allows you and he allows me to find exactly what we are looking for. Okay? That includes me. So, if someone is out only to discover fraud in a religious system, that's all they'll find, because you're finding what you want to discover. And if you're out to discover chinks in the armor of things, you'll find chinks in the armor. When you step back and you say, I'm not only searching for chinks in the armor, I want to know the truth of something too, you'll find both. You'll start to see both. That's what happened to me in Mormonism. At first, I wanted to find the chinks in the armor when I found out some of it were lies. And then I built upon that, and I built a whole body of all the problems with it. But then I stepped back and said, show me the truth, and I can see truths in it now too. We find what we're searching for, all right? The difference for me, you asked about me, is I honestly, hand to God, I swear, as far as I know, I want to discover only what is true, okay? Absolutely true relative to God. I don't care about the truth of geometry. I don't care about the truth of biology. I care about truth relative to God. That's what my heart desires. And the truth of God will include then the lies about God, because you find out the lies about God are not true. So then you learn that the truths of God are. So when your heart is open for truth alone relative to God, I believe he gives you what you want. I don't want to merely discover the lies. And my heart of hearts is on discovering the truths about him. And with God as my witness, I believe that is what I ultimately find. So on the two-way street that runs down between it's called the relationship between God and man, and it's a two-way street. If someone only wants to find cracks and faults and reasons not to have faith, you will. And you get what you want. God's a good God. He'll give it to you. Now, I have always personally sought for more. I have always personally sought to know him better. Okay? Finally, I balance all this out with results. And let me explain that to you. I look at what truths I have received and what they actually produce in my life to see if they have merit. If the truths that I believe I've received do not produce fruit of love for other people, then I know the thing I've embraced is faulty. So I've tried the course of Mormonism, and it made me look like a good guy outwardly, but I was worldly and I was a dick. Okay? So the fruit of Mormonism made me proud, worldly, and a dick in my heart. So I knew there's something wrong with the end product of what it's doing. Externally it worked, internally it wasn't working. I tried Marxism, I tried nihilism, I tried objectivism, I tried Buddhism to a certain extent, a lot of the ists and isms, but none of them changed the whole package. They all just changed part of what was going on. And so therefore, none of them could change the outward behavior and inward condition of a heart that loves. So it's pretty simple. I have honestly discovered, for me, you asked, that surrendering my life, will, heart, might, emotions over to Jesus as the Lord of my life has changed what by nature in me is pretty vile. And so I have become more selfless, not selfless, more merciful, not completely, more generous, more kind, more patient, more long-suffering, more loving, all as a result of pursuing him in truth, not only looking for the lies of him, but also the truth of him, making my heart centered on finding him, and then challenging things that don't measure up. So that's the package, really, of how I did it. You asked, how do I do it? That's how I do it. And I don't stand on tradition. I don't stand on religion. I go by that process. And if whatever I'm discovering and finding leads me to being a better Christian, which is defined by loving God and loving neighbor with all my heart, I embrace that. All right? And so I hope that helps. All right.